I transmigrated into a trashy, old-school angst novel and became the background character, the Emperor. In the original story, the female lead was the little princess. From the moment she was born, she was despised by the queen, switched at birth, and suffered endless hardships. She was eventually sold back into the palace as a maid, bullied by the fake crown prince, and thought she found true love with a general. Turns out, he was a scumbag who only used her as a body double. After suffering abuse to her body and soul, she died, taking a sword for the jerk. And now, I've become her useless tool of father. I looked down at the little princess, still in her swaddling clothes, and internally screamed from the cuteness. My munchkin, Mine, my little munchkin, I could just eat you up. 1. I opened my eyes, and my vision was filled with bright yellow velvet canopies. The scent of sandalwood and old parchment lingered in the air. Beneath me was a carved wooden bed, hard enough to bruise, definitely not my ergonomic gaming chair. Your Majesty, you're awake? A high-pitched voice, laced with surprise, rang out beside me. Your Majesty. I sat up abruptly, scanning my surroundings. It was an antique palace, resplendent with gold and jade, the air heavy with a kind of dusty authority I'd only ever felt in a museum. A middle-aged man with a pale, hairless face, dressed in the robes of a royal chamberlain, was kneeling respectfully by the bed. Holy, this scene, did I just transmigrate? Memories flooded my brain like a tidal wave, mixing another person's life and habits with a story background I was all too familiar with. King Alaric, ruler of the kingdom of Eldoria. He was also the background emperor in The Exile's Rose, the general's prisoner, that angst-filled romance novel I had board-clicked on my phone last night before bed. In the book, he was like an NPC. Aside from providing the title of emperor, he did absolutely nothing to stop the tragic fate of the heroine, Princess Alara. And now I was him. Oh, F-Seekin. I couldn't help but curse under my breath, clutching my forehead. I had only read the first half of that book before I almost had a stroke from the sheer stupidity of the plot and the endless torture porn inflicted on the heroine. Especially the little princess, Alara. The moment she was born, her biological mother, the queen, rejected her and swapped her out, ordering a maid to throw the princess outside the palace walls to be drowned. Luckily, the maid had a soft spot and just left the baby to fend for herself. The princess was adopted, suffered immensely, was sold back into the palace as a maid, and bullied by the fake prince. She finally thought she met her true love, General Gareth, only to find out he was a scumbag using her as a substitute. Tortured emotionally and physically, she finally died taking a sword for the trash man. What kind of garbage plot is this? I must have been a villain in my past life to have read this book. Wait, the timeline. I suddenly grabbed the chamberlain. This had to be the head chamberlain, Sterling, and asked urgently, "What is the date today? How old is the queen?" Sterling was startled by my intensity and hurriedly replied, "Answering your Majesty, today is the 18th of December. Her Majesty went into labor this morning. Word just came from the Queen's chambers. Rest assured, sire, everyone says Her Majesty is carrying a prince." A prince? Bullshit. That's exactly how it was written in the original text. To solidify her position, the Queen swapped her own daughter for a baby boy born to a chambermaid. The real little princess, the true royal bloodline, was currently being snuck out by the Queen's people, destined to be drowned. A nameless fire shot straight to my brain. To the Queen's chambers. Now, immediately, I almost roared it out, rushing outside before I even had my shoes on properly. Sterling and a group of palace servants were scared out of their wits, chasing after me with royal boots and a cloak. "Your Majesty." "Sire, slow down. Watch your step." How could I slow down? My mind was filled with that little life about to be strangled by fate. Even if she was just a paper character, that plot was too suffocating. I had lost sleep over it last night. Since I'm here, there is no way I'm letting that tragedy happen under my nose. I moved fast, heading straight for the Queen's quarters. Servants knelt all over the floor, but I ignored their shocked gazes and barged straight into the inner sanctum. The metallic scent of blood hadn't yet dissipated. Queen Rowena lay on the bed, pale-faced. Beside her was a bright yellow royal swaddle, containing the swapped boy, and a sharp-faced nursemaid was holding an inconspicuous, small bundle wrapped in ordinary blue cotton, quietly backing toward the exit. "Halt!" I shouted sternly. The nursemaid trembled violently, nearly dropping the bundle. The Queen struggled, trying to sit up. "Your Majesty, why are you here? The birthing room is unclean." I ignored her, stepping forward in huge strides until I stood before the nursemaid holding the blue bundle. I took a deep breath, reached out, and gently peeled back a corner of the cloth. A tiny, flushed face was revealed. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow, her eyelashes long like two tiny fans. Perhaps sensing the commotion, her little mouth smacked, and she slowly opened her eyes. They were incredibly clear, dark eyes like obsidian soaked in water, pure without a single impurity. She looked at me, not crying, just blinking with curious innocence. Instantly, I felt my heart get slammed by something heavy, turning soft and aching all at once. This was Alara, the little princess who, in the future, would be repeatedly trampled by fate, suffer endless pain, and finally wither away. Seeing her pure, innocent, and soft appearance, a wave of fatherly protectiveness and affection surged within me. What burst out of my mouth was something I didn't even expect, practically squealing in a high-pitched tone. "My munchkin, Mine, my little munchkin, I could just eat you up, too." The room went dead silent. Sterling's jaw dropped, the queen's face went chalk-white, and the nursemaid holding Alara shook like a leaf in a storm. Carefully, almost reverently, I took the light, soft little dumpling from the nursemaid's stiff arms and held her tight against my chest. The little one seemed to sense safety. She nuzzled against me, closed her eyes, and went back to peaceful sleep. Holding her, I felt like I was holding the whole world and the key to changing a tragic destiny. I looked up, my gaze sharp as a knife, shooting straight at the bloodless queen on the bed. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried undeniable royal authority. "The queen has worked hard giving birth to twins. Rest well. I am very fond of the princess. This daughter I will raise personally by my side." Before the queen could object about protocol, I paused, my gaze sweeping over the yellow swaddle beside her, adding with pointed meaning, "As for the prince, I have my own arrangements." With that, ignoring any potential reaction behind me, I hugged this regained, warm little body, turned, and strode out of the queen's chambers. Since the news of the queen giving birth to a prince had already spread, declaring twins was the most appropriate move. Sunlight streamed through the cracks of the palace gates. Little Alara in my arms was sleeping soundly. I looked down at her, my heart swelling with ambition. "Baby girl, don't be afraid. Your tragedy script? Starting today, Daddy is tearing it to shreds. The good life of the two of us is just beginning." Cradling this soft little life, I walked all the way back to the royal study, my steps lighter than ever before, yet filled with a careful cherish. Sterling followed behind me, not daring to breathe loud, his expression hovering between shock and disbelief. Back in the warm pavilion, I dismissed most of the servants, keeping only two of the most steady and honest-looking nannies. From today on, the princess lives in the side hall of the royal study. I ordered in a low voice, scanning them. "You two, along with the wet nurse I select, are solely responsible for the princess. Remember, if there is even the slightest mishap with the princess, I will hold you personally responsible. We obey your command." The two knelt in fear, though their eyes also held excitement for this sudden honor. I placed little Alara gently into the prepared cradle lined with soft brocade. She was sleeping deeply, her little chest rising and falling rhythmically, pink fists curled by her cheeks like a defenseless little angel. I sat by the bed, just watching, my heart turning into absolute mush, while simultaneously rising with a dad-like pride. Raising a kid, and such a cute baby girl at that. This was way more exciting than raising a digital pet in a game. What tragic heroine. From today on, my daughter is the chosen one, the ultimate Mary Sue. Wait, Mary Sue might not be a compliment. Whatever, my daughter is the best. Your Majesty, Sterling reminded me in a whisper. The prince in the queen's chambers. I snapped back to reality, my eyes cooling slightly. Right, the cuckoo in the nest. According to the original book, this child's biological mother was a maid the emperor slept with while drunk. He was later raised crooked by the queen and became one of the accomplices in bullying Alara. But in the end, he was just a victim of the queen's ambition, an innocent tool used for power struggles. Pass down my decree. The queen gave birth to twins. I mused for a moment. The queen needs quiet to recover and shouldn't be overworked. The prince shall be given to Lady Genevieve in the Jade Palace to raise. Genevieve is gentle by nature and has no children. She will treat him well. Lady Genevieve came from a humble background and kept a low profile. She was the right choice. It ensured the prince wouldn't be mistreated, but also effectively cut off the queen's undue influence over him. Also, I added, grant him the name Arthur. Prince Arthur. This name carried my hope as a father, and also a subtle warning. Kid, I'm giving you a new environment and a new way of living in this life. I hope you're smart enough to get along with your sister later. Otherwise, my paddle isn't made of marshmallows. 3. Having dealt with the prince's matter, I immediately focused all my attention back on my little Alara. Raising a child, especially one destined to escape a tragic fate and reach the peak of life, is by no means a simple task. As a straight-laced guy whose theoretical knowledge came entirely from internet memes and the occasional parenting article, my practical experience was zero. But it didn't matter. I was the king. I had the best resources. Wasn't this just the Princess Maker game? I'd played that. I began micromanaging everything. Strictly control the wet nurse's diet. It must be bland and nutritious, no junk food. Use only the softest cotton, washed repeatedly. Do not chafe my little munchkin. The temperature in the side hall must be constant, not too hot, not too cold. Put away those clanging jade pendants and gold locks. They're too heavy. Just replace them with a lightweight silver locket. The palace staff were spun around like tops by my detailed demands, and their gaze toward the little princess became increasingly reverent. This princess carried way too much weight in the king's heart. A few days later, I found time to visit the Jade Palace. Lady Genevieve was indeed a gentle woman, holding little Arthur with soft movements, her eyes filled with genuine pity and love. The little guy was sturdier than Alara, currently awake and looking around with dark eyes. I walked over and poked his chubby cheek. He didn't react much, just kept staring blankly at the canopy. Doesn't look too bright? Whatever, simple is good. Better than being a scheming brat. I whispered to this son-in name. Kid, look clearly. In that cradle over there is your sister, Princess Alara. I pointed to Alara, who was being held by a nanny nearby, also awake and quietly gnawing on her fist. In the future, you have to protect her, understand? If anyone dares to bully her, you tell Dad, and Dad will go beat them up. Lady Genevieve chuckled beside me, then quickly lowered her head. Little Arthur naturally didn't understand, just making a babbling sound. But on the other side, little Alara seemed to hear her name. She stopped gnawing on her fist, turned her head toward me, and then, opening her toothless little mouth, gave a huge, unconscious smile. My heart was instantly shot through. My daughter smiled at me. How is she so cute? I will protect this smile. Whatever, young general body double romance, plots can go to hell. All of them to hell. Time slipped away quietly in these busy, novel, and warm days. Because of the twins' announcement, the queen didn't dare make a scene openly, but she still tried to get close to little Arthur in secret. Fortunately, Lady Genevieve was a perceptive person. After seeing my attitude toward the queen, she minimized Arthur's direct contact with her. 4. Little Alara grew day by day, shedding the redness and wrinkles of a newborn, becoming increasingly fair and beautiful. She seemed especially close to me. As long as I held her, she rarely cried, her big dark eyes always following my figure. I began to feel unsatisfied with just watching her. I wanted to participate in her growth. I waved brightly colored plush toys in front of her and told her adapted versions of fairy tales with exaggerated tones and expressions. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was super tough. She could defeat the big bad wolf all by herself. She didn't need to wait for any hunter. Look, baby, this glass slipper is actually uncomfortable to walk in. In the future, if we wear shoes, we wear the most comfortable soft-soled embroidered shoes, so we can run fast and jump high. She didn't understand, of course, but she would look at me, babbling in response, occasionally letting out a giggle. That laughter was like the crispest silver bell, able to disperse all the exhaustion brought by complicated state affairs. Aside from government duties, I spent most of my time in the side hall. When I reviewed memorials and decrees, I had the nanny hold her on the soft couch nearby to play. She started learning to crawl like a clumsy and cute little turtle, working hard to move across the brocade quilt. Sometimes she would crawl to the edge of the couch, holding onto the edge, trying to stand up, her grape-like eyes curiously examining the mountain of documents on my desk. Duh. One day, she vaguely uttered a syllable sounding like da, her little finger pointing at the pile of paperwork on the desk. Fight. I paused, then realized she probably saw the words of the ministers quoting classics and attacking each other in the documents, and thought it looked like arguing. I couldn't help but laugh, lifting her on my lap. I pointed at the simple characters on the scroll to teach her. This reads peace, for peace under heaven. This reads strong, for a rich country and strong people. Alara, remember, in the future, we want everyone to be at peace and be strong. She seemed to understand, yet not understand, extending a chubby hand and slapped the scroll, leaving a small, wet handprint. Yes, a royal seal. My daughter has had the domineering aura of stamping documents since childhood. As for Prince Arthur, I didn't neglect him. I often summoned Lady Genevieve to bring him over to play with Alara. Alara seemed to have a natural closeness to this brother. She would push her favorite plush toys to him, although the little guy often just stared blankly. I watched them lying side by side on the couch, silently planning in my heart. Literary arts? Alara seems naturally gifted. Martial arts? Must start young too, to avoid being bullied by any random cats or dogs in the future. And that young general, Gareth. Should I just execute his dad? The sins of the father? Oh right, Gareth is already born, so I can't solve at the root. I had a second thought. I'll just transfer the entire House of Blackwood to the border garrison so Gareth never has a chance to appear in front of Lara. General Blackwood looked bewildered when he received the royal decree. He didn't expect it to be so sudden. Regarding this, I had Chamberlain Sterling pass on a message. You really gave birth to a good son. To anyone else, this would sound like praise, but paired with the Chamberlain's twisting tone, it was pure sarcasm. Rumor has it that the sound of bamboo shoots stir-fried with meat, spanking, rang out in the Blackwood household all night, and the house was filled with Gareth's confused crying. Being the male lead in an old-school angst novel is the best, but this was probably the bitterest moment of Gareth's life. After the initial chaos and adjustment period passed, everything gradually got on the right track. Although the court officials had some complaints about me personally raising the princess, after I decisively handled a few backlogged political matters and showed imperial methods that were far from senile, those voices quieted down. The harem, after a brief ripple, seemed to temporarily accept this setup. I knew the queen's unwillingness and fear wouldn't disappear easily, and the potential danger remained. But looking at little Alara growing healthier and livelier day by day, and little Arthur who was slow but growing too, my heart was filled with strength. This is just the beginning. My princess raising plan has officially launched. The future of the kingdom of Eldoria will surely shine with a completely different brilliance because of this pearl in my palm. 5. Time flew like sand through fingers. In the blink of an eye, the little dumpling babbling in the cradle could now run stumbling through the palace. The royal study had almost become Alara's playground and kindergarten. Thick carpets covered the floor, and sharp corners of furniture were carefully wrapped in soft cloth. Instead of antiques, you saw custom-made colorful blocks, soft fabric balls, and colorful cards with simple words hanging all over the walls. D.Y. A voice crisp as a young swallow came from outside the hall, accompanied by the thump-thump of small footsteps. A figure in a pink palace dress rushed in like a cannonball, accurately throwing herself onto my legs. She looked up with that increasingly exquisite face, flushed white and red, her dark eyes looking at me brightly. Alara finished writing. I put down the vermilion pen, bent down to scoop her onto my knee, and took the rice paper she handed over like a treasure. On it were crooked characters like peace, strong, and Alara, the ink uneven, looking like a group of drunk tadpoles. But next to the big character for her name, she had drawn a stick figure wearing a square block on its head. Probably the royal crown. Ah, my daughter drew a portrait of me. It's a bit abstract, but she captured the soul. This must be framed. Hang it by the bed. Written well. Drawn even better. I praised without stinginess, rubbing my chin against the top of her soft hair. My Alara is truly incredibly smart. She swung her little feet proudly and started counting on her fingers. The tutor praised me today for memorizing the classics fast. The archery master said my horse stance is stable. Lady Genevieve gave me fresh osmanthus cake, and Brother Arthur let me play with his wooden horse. Listening to her milky voice report her daily government affairs, my heart was full of fatherly gratification. In these years, I withstood the pressure and insisted on letting Alara start her education alongside the princes. At first, old scholars muttered about how a princess could sit with princes, but after Alara showed her photographic memory and quick understanding a few times, those voices faded. The teachers I hired for her were not pedantic old scholars, but open-minded instructors who focused on practical learning. Besides the classics, they mixed in stories about geography and the lives of the common people. Martial arts and archery were not neglected either. The female shadow guard I found, who was originally the male lead's future guard captain, was now Alara's exclusive martial arts master. Her small figure squatting in horse stance on the training grounds, practicing basic punches, getting a bit tanned but looking healthier and livelier. Her eyes holding a heroic spirit not found in ordinary boudoir girls. Good, very good. The foundation for both literary and martial arts is being built. Let's see which blind fool dares to say my daughter is a helpless flower in the future. She's going to beat that Gareth down until he kneels and sings the anthem. Just then, Lady Genevieve walked in holding the hand of Arthur, who was now over 4 years old. Arthur was sturdy, and his personality was indeed as honest and slightly slow as when I first saw him. He was slower than children his age in learning to speak and recognize words. But he was exceptionally reliant on Alara, like a little tail. Wherever his sister went, his eyes followed. Sigh, environment really determines a person's life. Who would have thought that the future prince who teased cats and dogs, harassed maids, and sold government positions would be this cute now? Sister. Arthur's eyes lit up as soon as he saw Alara. He broke free from Lady Genevieve's hand and ran over clumsily, handing her a piece of sesame candy that had slightly melted in his palm. Eat. Sweet. Alara slid off my knee, took the candy, broke it in half, put the bigger piece back in Arthur's mouth, and ate the smaller piece herself, smiling until her eyes curved. Thank you, Arthur. Watching these siblings, one clever and elegant, one honest and protective, the satisfaction in my heart was indescribable. The art of balancing favor? Perfectly. 6. One day, I was reviewing memorials while Alara and Arthur played with blocks on the carpet nearby. Alara could already build decent-looking palaces with the blocks, while Arthur was still trying to stack 2 blocks together. An old academic came in to report, discussing a flood in a certain province, quoting classics, and using obscure language. After the old official left, Alara put down her blocks, crawled to my royal desk, grabbed the edge with her small hands, and asked curiously, "Daddy, was that white-bearded grandpa arguing?" Why couldn't Alara understand anything he said? I laughed, lifted her onto my lap, pointed at words like flood and relief on the scroll, and explained in the plainest language. It wasn't arguing. It's that in a certain place, it rained heavily for a long time. The river rose and flooded the houses and fields of the common people. They have nowhere to live and no food to eat. They are very pitiful. That grandpa was telling Daddy about this, so Daddy can think of a way to help them. Alara frowned her little brow, thinking seriously. Then, Daddy, send people to help them quickly. Send food, send clothes, help them build new houses. Arthur, on the side, also looked up and echoed ignorantly, "Help, help." Looking at the pure concern in my daughter's clear eyes, I felt moved and guided her. Then how does Alara think we should help? Who do we send? Where does the food come from? Alara tilted her head, thinking hard. Send a very amazing minister. Food, take it from Daddy's warehouse. She paused, then added, don't let bad guys steal it, and eat it. Oh my God, my daughter not only has a benevolent heart, but also preliminary governance ideas and anti-corruption awareness. A genius. My vision was indeed correct. However, under the calm and warm days, undercurrents never stopped surging. The queen and her family felt Alara's existence like a fishbone stuck in their throat. Especially with Alara's growing intelligence and my undisguised favoritism, they felt an unprecedented threat. The switched legitimate son, Arthur, was now raised by Lady Genevieve. Although he wasn't smart, his identity remained. If Alara, the true royal bloodline, continued to gain the king's favor, the consequences would be unimaginable. A storm quietly arrived when Alara was almost 6. First, rumors inexplicably started spreading in the palace, saying Princess Alara's horoscope was too hard and clashed with the royal luck, causing the poor harvest in the north last year. Then, the censors from the queen's family faction implicitly suggested in court that the princess living in the royal study for so long was against protocol and might not be a blessing for the state. They hinted that the princess should be moved to a remote palace or married off early to settle the people's hearts. Here it comes. Classic palace intrigue drama. Blaming horoscopes? I say it's an auspicious sign. Want to marry my daughter off? Keep dreaming. My munchkin is only a few years old. These people deserve execution. Although I suppressed the storm stirred up by the queen's faction in the previous court session with thunderous methods, rumors in the palace are always pervasive. Even though I tried my best to shield her, fragments inevitably seeped through the palace walls. A few nights later, the royal study was brightly lit. I was reviewing documents as usual, and Alara was playing with a 9-ring puzzle on the carpet nearby. Except, the little person who usually ran over to share her progress after playing for a while was unusually quiet today. She held the puzzle, but her eyes were staring into space, her little brows slightly furrowed, looking heavy-hearted. Click! The puzzle made a soft sound as she unconsciously twisted it. She looked up at me, lips moving slightly, then looked down again. This repeated several times. I put down the vermilion pen and asked gently, Alara, what's wrong? Is the puzzle very hard today? She shook her head, put down the toy, ran to my desk, thump, 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 grabbed the edge with her small hands, and looked up. Those dark eyes, so like mine, were filled with unease and conflict. Daddy, her voice was small, carrying a trace of undetectable grievance. Did daughter make you unhappy? My heart sank, but I kept my face calm. I put down the pen, lifted her onto my lap, and asked softly, why would you think that? Daddy is so happy whenever he sees Alara. She lowered her head, fiddling with her sash, and whispered, but Nanny Zhang and the others whispered that daughter living here with Daddy is against the rules. They said daughter is some kind of bad omen, causing Daddy to be criticized by those officials, causing trouble for Daddy. Her voice got quieter and quieter, almost crying. Nanny Zhang also said for Daddy's good, daughter should be sensible and leave secretly. A chill instantly shot up from the bottom of my heart. Nanny Zhang, I remembered her. An old maid assigned by the Internal Affairs Department. She looked honest usually. I didn't expect her to be a nail planted by others, daring to gossip like this in front of Alara. Very good. Their hands reached right into my royal study, right next to Alara. It seems the previous cleansing wasn't thorough enough. These people are truly pervasive, using even such a small child. I suppressed my rage. I couldn't let negative emotions affect my daughter. I gently cupped her small face, making her look into my eyes. Alara, look at Daddy. Daddy asked you again. Do you think Daddy is happy to see you? Alara looked into my eyes. The tenderness and firmness there made her feel slightly safer. She nodded, then said hesitantly, but, no buts. I interrupted her, my tone solemn. Does Alara remember? Daddy said between father and daughter, if there is anything, we must say it and discuss it together. We absolutely cannot lie, right? This sentence seemed to touch her. She nodded her little head vigorously. Remember, Daddy said lying doesn't make a good child. Then Alara telling Daddy the sadness in her heart today was exactly the right thing to do. I first affirmed her, then guided her patiently. Now Daddy tells you what Nanny Zhang said is all wrong. It is a lie. I organized my thoughts and spoke in a way she could understand. Daddy will tell you a new story, okay? Once upon a time, there was a very cute and smart little white deer who lived happily with her Deer King Papa. But there was a bad wolf in the forest who wanted to steal the Deer King's position. He didn't dare challenge the Deer King directly, so he secretly told the little white deer, the antlers on your head are too beautiful. They are an object of bad luck. They will bring disaster to your papa. You should leave the forest quickly. Alara listened with wide eyes. The little white deer was very kind. She was afraid of really bringing disaster to her papa, so she was so sad she wanted to leave. Luckily, before leaving, she told the Deer King Papa. The Deer King Papa understood immediately. This was the bad wolf's plot. He told the little white deer, your antlers are a gift from the heavens, a symbol of wisdom and strength, not bad luck at all. The bad wolf tricked you into leaving because he is afraid you will grow up to be stronger than your papa, and he wants to get rid of you first. If you really left, Papa would be heartbroken, and the bad wolf would win. I looked at Alara's realizing face and concluded, Alara, look, those who say you are bad luck and persuade you to leave are just like the bad wolf in the story. They don't really think you are bad. They are afraid of you. They are afraid of Daddy loving you. They want to use Alara's kindness and sensibility to achieve the goal of making Daddy sad. I held her face, word by word, incredibly clear and solemn. Remember Daddy's words today. Our Alara is Daddy's lucky star, a treasure that brings joy and hope, never a disaster star. Those words are lies they made up to trick you and hurt Daddy. If you believe them and leave, that is truly falling for the bad guy's trick, and Daddy would truly be sad. Understand? Alara's eyes lit up little by little. The previous gloom and self-doubt were dispelled, replaced by an anger and realization of being enlightened. She clenched her small fists, her voice milky but unusually firm. Daddy, I understand. Nanny Zhang and the others are bad people. They want to trick me into leaving Daddy. They are too bad. Yes, they are bad people, I affirmed, taking the chance to guide her. And think about it. To trick you, they didn't even hesitate to use the disaster suffered by the people in the north as an excuse. How hateful is that? People who truly care about the citizens should be like Daddy, thinking of ways to provide relief and help the people, not hiding behind the scenes using the disaster to fabricate lies and bully a little girl. Alara looked thoughtful, her small face nodding seriously. Those in high positions should do their best for the people. We can't be like the bad guys. I smiled with relief and kissed her forehead. Alara is absolutely right. That night, under the charge of gossiping about masters and sowing discord. I quickly disposed of Nanny Zhang and the associated servants, clearing them out of the royal study. This act served as a deterrent and further purified Ilara's growing environment. And after this late-night heart-to-heart, Ilara seemed to grow up a lot all at once. Her eyes held less confusion and more calm contemplation. She clung to me more, yet became more independent, as if knowing that in this deep palace, Daddy was her solid rock, but she also needed to learn to use her own wisdom and strength to face the coming storms. However, this rumor had to be resolved thoroughly. At the morning court the next day, I flew into a rage on the spot, rebuking the censor who had run into the line of fire until he was speechless. The harvest failure in the north is a natural disaster. What does it have to do with a young child? You eat the king's grain, yet do not think of solving the people's worries. Instead, you speak of supernatural nonsense and slander my beloved daughter. What are your intentions? The princess lives in the royal study because I am personally raising her, hoping she understands reason and knows the people's livelihood. You keep talking about etiquette and rules. Is a father personally teaching his daughter not human nature? Is it disrupting the state? I used the topic to severely reprimand the queen's family, dismiss 2 officials who were jumping the most, and suppress this evil wind with lightning speed. In the harem, I also strengthened the guards and personnel screening of the royal study to ensure no unclean things reached Ilara. This storm seemed to settle on the surface, but I knew this was just the beginning. The queen's murderous intent had likely been ignited, and the young General Gareth, one of the heroine's tribulations in the original book, his family seemed to have connections with the queen's family. Looks like I need to speed up. I need to tighten up on civil and martial arts, and I need to instill self-defense awareness against palace intrigue and domestic drama into my daughter. And that Gareth, I can't just move him away. I need to find a chance so he and his family completely lose the ability to stir up trouble. I looked at Ilara in the courtyard, patiently teaching Arthur to identify weapons from a diagram. The setting sun plated her in warm gold. She pointed at the pictures, explaining clearly, and although Arthur only half understood, he still tried hard to open his eyes wide and nod seriously. My daughter is growing strong amidst the prototype of the storm. She is no longer the tragic hero who needs saving. She will be, and must be, the tide rider who can face the waves and even command them. The road ahead, Daddy will clear as many obstacles as possible for you. But for the rest, you need to walk it and break through yourself. 7. After this battle, I was even more convinced that mere protection was not enough. Ilara had to be powerful enough herself so that no scoundrel dared to covet her. Her education needed to move into a more systematic and in-depth stage. So, I granted her special permission to enter the royal school and listen to lectures with the princes. At first, the older princes were dismissive, but soon, they were awed by this younger sister's intellect. Once, the tutor explained the line, the common people could be made to follow a path, but not to understand it from the Analects, expounding on historical annotations. When it was the prince's turn to speak, most just repeated the text. When it was Ilara's turn, she stood up, her voice clear, but carrying a trace of confusion. Tutor, Father often says the people are the foundation of the state. If we only make the people obey orders, but don't let them understand the reasoning, over time, aren't we just driving cattle and sheep? If a disaster year comes and the government provides relief, if the people don't understand why, they only know to reach out and wait. They might breed resentment or be easily incited. Why can't we educate the masses, let them know propriety and righteousness, and understand that the court's laws are to ensure they live and work in peace? This way, with high and low of one mind, the country could be truly strong and stable, right? These words, though carrying a child's immaturity, pointed straight to the core, faintly revealing the importance of education and the wisdom of the people, shocking the whole room. The tutor stroked his beard, sighing after a long while, "Princess, your views are unique and thought-provoking." When I heard Sterling relay the words, the corners of my mouth nearly split to my ears. See that? That's the daughter I raised personally. Vision. That's called vision. Way better than those stinking brats who only know how to study dead books. After school, Ilara ran to ask me, "Daddy, was what I said in the royal school today wrong?" The tutor and brothers seemed very surprised. I patted her head, encouraging her. It wasn't wrong. Thinking itself is never wrong. Daddy is very happy you have your own ideas. Remember, reading isn't to repeat others' words. It's to understand reason, to solve actual problems. In terms of martial arts, Ilara's progress was Godspeed. She seemed to have a natural affinity for riding and shooting. At 6, she could already ride a custom-made pony and trot steadily on the training grounds. She couldn't draw a strong bow yet, so she started with a delicate hand crossbow, her aim excellent. The female shadow guard master praised her when reporting privately, eyes full of admiration. The princess has a tough will. Her physical strength may not match a man's, but her agility and comprehension far exceed ordinary people, especially in seizing timing. Watching her small figure sweating like rain on the field, falling and getting up herself, eyes stubborn, I felt both proud and heartbroken. Good. That's the refusal to yield I wanted. Stamina can be trained, skills can be polished, but this spirit is the most precious. Arthur remained average in literary talent, but showed interest in martial arts and practical affairs. He was stronger than children his age and willing to put in the hard work for horse stance and boxing. Alara was extremely patient with this brother. After school, she was often his little teacher, retelling what the tutor said in simpler words for Arthur, teaching him to read. Arthur learned slowly, but she didn't get annoyed, repeating it over and over. Once I saw Arthur tracing calligraphy, writing crookedly, sweating with anxiety. Alara walked over, held his small hand, and guided him stroke by stroke, whispering, "Arthur, don't rush. Look, this character protect looks like a person opening their arms to protect something important. Daddy said a man must know how to guard. You have to guard Eldoria, and guard the people you want to protect, right?" Arthur looked up at his sister, nodded vigorously, his eyes full of pure reliance and seriousness. I watched this scene quietly without disturbing them. Perfect. Sisterly love and brotherly respect. Arthur, remember your sister's words. In the future, you will be her solidest shield. The queen and her family didn't give up. During a palace night banquet, someone tried to drug Alara's pastry. It wasn't a deadly poison, but a drug that would cause rashes all over the body, making one unpresentable for a short time. Their heart was punishable. They intended to ruin Alara's growing reputation, preventing her from appearing in public, perhaps even alienating her due to a strange disease. Fortunately, I was prepared. The people planted in the kitchen bureau discovered the anomaly in advance. I didn't make a scene. I just secretly disposed of the people involved and used the opportunity to clean out another batch of the queen's nails. Afterward, I called Alara to me. I didn't hide it. I told her the whole story. The 10-year-old girl could already understand these schemes. Her small face went slightly pale, clutching her hem tightly. But there was no fear in her eyes, only anger and a clarity beyond her years. "Daddy," her voice trembled slightly, but was unusually firm. "Is it because Alara is in someone's way?" I held her slightly cold hand, saying in a low voice, "Yes and no. More accurately, it is because of your excellence. Your existence makes certain people who rely on extraordinary means for profit feel threatened. They are afraid of you, so they use such low methods." She was silent for a moment, then looked up, eyes flashing with determined light. "Daddy, your daughter understands. Hiding under Daddy's wings won't make these people give up. Only if your daughter is strong enough to make all their calculations futile, can I be truly safe." From that day on, Alara worked even harder. She not only studied history and archery, but began actively asking me about the court structure and official factions, even showing a strong interest in penal law and economics. She was no longer just a pampered, cultivated princess. She began to have clear self-awareness and goals. At the same time, my handling of Gareth Blackwood was put on the agenda. This character, who brought endless pain to Alara in the book, was now just a budding son of a military family. His family did have connections with the Queen's family, and Gareth himself had some fame among the younger generation due to his martial prowess and family background, gradually breeding arrogance. I didn't move against him directly. Instead, I found an excuse, an old, minor fault of his father during his military service. With solid evidence of forming cliques and embezzling military pay, I transferred him away from the capital's key post, a promotion in name, but a demotion in reality, sending him to a border region. Gareth, as the son, naturally followed. Before they left the capital, I even deliberately ran into the young general at a palace banquet. He was indeed handsome, with arrogance between his brows. The looks are decent, too bad the inside is trash. Still want to be the male lead of a body double romance? The border sandstorms are perfect for grinding down your character. Stay away from my daughter in this life. I spoke to him casually, really speaking more to his father. Young man, having sharpness is good, but one must know there are always people better than you, and heavens beyond heavens. Merits are taken on horseback, but one must keep loyalty and awe in the heart. Do not take the wrong path and fail my expectations. The Blackwood father and son retreated, sweating cold sweat. With this, the The two main external threats in the original book, the Queen's family's direct persecution and Gareth's emotional trap, were handled. One was strictly monitored with damaged influence, the other physically isolated, far from the center of power in Alara's life circle. Watching Alara reading the Chronicles of the Nine Provinces seriously under the lamp, her profile calm and focused, I knew that the tragic heroine who needed me to constantly worry about plot kills was drifting further away. What I was personally cultivating was a peerless flower accumulating strength, about to bloom against the wind, a sharp blade showing its edge, destined to shine across the 9 provinces. Her stage was not just this deep palace backyard, and my mission was to clear the last obstacles and pave the most solid road for her before she truly spread her wings and soared. 8 years passed like a shuttle. In a snap of the fingers, the little dumpling babbling on my knee had blossomed into a graceful young lady. The coming-of-age ceremony was approaching. The palace was busy preparing, full of joy. However, a report from the border cast a shadow over my good mood. The Blackwood family, due to border garrison rotation and the princess's ceremony, was ordered to return to the capital. The name Gareth Blackwood was like a thorn buried for years. Although I had deliberately removed and marginalized it, hearing he was about to appear in front of Alara brought the heart-wrenching plots of the original book flooding back uncontrollably, making me instantly nervous. Lingering ghost. Why does this kid have to come back now? What if the damn plot gravity still exists? No, I need Alara to have an impression first, preferably a bad one. I immediately arranged for the Blackwood father and son to enter the palace for an audience to report on border affairs. At the same time, I specifically had Alara stay behind a screen in the royal study to listen. I called it understanding the reality of border generals, but really, I wanted her to hear if this Gareth was as rumored or if he showed any signs that might spark a teenage girl's fancy. The audience was lackluster. Old Blackwood had aged a lot, his words cautious. Gareth had indeed grown taller, his face handsome, carrying a ruggedness polished by border winds. But the gloom and hidden resentment between his brows, born from his family's loss of power and marginalization, couldn't escape my eyes. His report on military affairs was fluent, but lacked brilliant insights. Afterward, I asked Alara, who walked out from behind the screen, pretending to be casual, "Alara, what do you think of the Blackwood father and son? Especially that Gareth?" Alara, dressed in a goose-yellow everyday gown, her figure already elegant, thought for a moment and answered logically. Answering father, old General Blackwood is advanced in years. His sharpness is lost. He is adequate for defense, but lacks enterprise. His son, Gareth, may have bravery, but his temperament seems unstable. His insights on border strategy are average, and, observing his eyes, he seems to hold resentment toward his current situation. The Blackwood family's network in the military has withered. While they may not commit major errors, they are hard-pressed to handle great responsibilities. Her analysis was entirely based on the political situation and capability, her tone calm and waveless, without a single trace of a maiden's shyness or curiosity. Good, as expected of my daughter. Accurate judgment. Analysis on point. Completely unbewitched by that skin. I am very comforted. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the alarm was cleared. However, I never expected that on the afternoon of the same day, at the polo match held at the Duke's estate, the Blackwood group would appear in the spectator stands. I frowned slightly, looking at Alara beside me. She wore a riding outfit today for ease of movement, looking even more heroic and dashing. Sensing my confusion, she whispered an explanation. "Father, the Duke received mentorship from the old General Blackwood in his early years. Although the Blackwood family isn't what it used to be, the Duke values old ties. Inviting them to watch the ceremony is reasonable." I realized then, looking at my daughter who knew the web of court relationships so well, a wave of comfort hit me again. Alara really grew up. She's clear on all these twisting interpersonal relationships. The Duke is a loyal man. But my comfort didn't last long. Right after I symbolically awarded the prize to the winning team, Gareth suddenly stepped out from the crowd. Holding the jade scepter representing victory, he walked straight to the royal presence, knelt on one knee, his voice booming. "Your Majesty, I, Gareth Blackwood, luckily won the top prize in today's polo match. I boldly wish to use this prize to beg your Majesty for a favor." My heart sank violently. An ominous premonition instantly grabbed me. The field went silent immediately. All eyes focused on Gareth. "What favor do you seek?" My voice was low, carrying an undetectable chill. Gareth looked up, his gaze burning as he looked at Alara beside me, and announced loudly, I, Gareth, have admired Her Highness the Princess for a long time. I implore your majesty to marry the princess to me. I will dedicate my life to protecting the princess's safety. Crash! The wine cup in my hand was smashed onto the ground by me, amber liquid and shards splashing everywhere. Rage erupted in my chest like a volcano. Good job, Gareth. Truly ambitious. Daring to use a broken prize to force a marriage proposal in front of this crowd. As Alara approached her coming of age, those old fossils in the court had indeed started urging me implicitly and explicitly to choose a husband for her. I blocked them all with the princess is still young. I wish to keep her a few more years. I didn't expect Gareth to dare be the bird that sticks its neck out. Bastard, who do you think you are? Admired for a long time? Don't think I don't know. You've been at the border all these years, but in your heart, you're thinking about that white moonlight who died young. I was merciful back then. Thinking that girl was innocent, I specially sent a divine doctor, but she had poor luck and didn't survive. Those letters you wrote to her, Gareth, did you think I didn't know? Now you see my Alara is outstanding and want to pick the right fruit. Dream on. My face was iron blue. I was about to shout sternly and punish him, but I saw a figure move beside me. Alara had already stepped forward, standing in front of me. Her face was calm, with none of the shyness or anger a normal girl might have at a public proposal. Only a cold clarity. She nodded slightly to me first, then turned to Gareth, her voice clearly spreading across the field. General Blackwood, today's polo prize was granted by His Majesty. It is yours. But my marriage is my own to decide. She paused, her gaze sweeping the field, finally landing back on Gareth, carrying a hint of arrogance. I once swore my future husband, leaving aside literary and military strategy for now, must at least be no worse than me in horsemanship and archery. Since General Blackwood has this intention, do you dare to compete with me? If you win, I will grant your request just now and speak for you before Father. If you lose... She didn't finish, but the meaning in her eyes was self-evident. Gareth clearly didn't expect the princess to personally enter the field. He was stunned for a moment, then a flash of anger at being slighted and a look of determination crossed his eyes. He prided himself on his exquisite riding and archery. How could he lose to a deep palace woman? Even if he heard the princess studied martial arts, surely it was just flowery fists and embroidered legs for cultivating character. The princess is a golden branch and jade leaf. I wouldn't dare offend. But since the princess wishes to test me, I respectfully obey. Alara, I called out anxiously in a low voice, worried. I knew her archery was superb, but Gareth was battlefield tested after all. What if? Alara looked back at me, her eyes firm, carrying a plea, and shook her head gently. Then she formally knelt. Father, your daughter requests a decree to compete in archery with General Blackwood. Please grant permission, Father. Looking at the unquestionable confidence in her eyes and the determination to solve the trouble herself, I swallowed the dissuasion on my lips. I knew she wasn't just doing it to give me an out, but to prove herself to everyone. I took a deep breath and said deeply, granted. The grounds were quickly cleared, and moving targets were set up. Both changed into riding gear and mounted their horses. Gareth looked at Alara, who handled her horse skillfully and couldn't help saying, although your highness has learned archery, you ultimately cannot compare to us men fighting on the battlefield. Why be so serious? If you get hurt. Alara glanced at him with disdain, tightened the reins, and said coldly, whether I compare or not, we'll know after we try. General Blackwood, please. The signal sounded. In the first few rounds, on moving targets, both released arrows almost simultaneously. The arrows whistled out, both hitting the bull's eye. Extremely precise. A trace of shock flashed across Gareth's face. He thought the princess only knew a little. He didn't expect such accuracy. However, Gareth was an experienced general after all. He quickly put away his contempt and got serious. The scores rose alternately, quickly tying. The scene was deadlocked for a time. My heart was in my throat. During a moment when they rode side by side chasing the same target position, Alara suddenly turned her head and said coldly to Gareth, General Blackwood, you do not truly admire me. Gareth's mind shook, his hand lagged slightly. The arrow deviated a fraction. It still hit the target, but not the center. He forced himself to stay calm. Why does the princess say this? My heart for the princess can be attested by heaven and earth. Alara's eyes were sharp as knives. Her voice wasn't loud, but it drilled clearly into his ears. The way you look at me isn't like looking at a lover. It looks like you're looking at someone else. This sentence was like thunder, blowing Gareth's mind into chaos. The face of that gentle, long-past girl instantly floated in his mind, and his movements involuntarily froze. Right now, Alara's eyes narrowed. The moment Gareth shot his arrow in a trance, just as it was about to hit the target, she drew her bow like a full moon, her arrow arriving second but striking first. Swish crack! Her arrow accurately slammed into Gareth's arrow shaft, knocking it down. And almost at the same time, her other arrow was already knocked. Almost without aiming, relying on instinct, she fired instantly. Thud! A muffled sound. That arrow firmly stuck in the red bullseye, the tail feathers still trembling. The whole field was silent for a second, then erupted in earth-shaking cheers. Her Highness is mighty. Good archery, princess. Alara reined in her horse, looked at the pale, unbelieving Gareth, and asked indifferently, General Blackwood now, do I still look like her? Then, without waiting for his answer, she announced decisively, You lost. She turned her horse sharply, not sparing another glance at the soul-lost Gareth, and rode straight back to the spectator stand. She dismounted lightly and walked to my side, her face wearing a relaxed and slightly dependent smile of victory, as if the aura-blasting, sharp-edged female warrior just now was an illusion. Father, your daughter did not disgrace her mission. I looked at my daughter leaning against me, smiling, and my heart was filled with mixed feelings, lingering fear, pride, and endless relief. I gently patted her hand, sighing, My Alara has truly grown up. She was no longer the little girl who needed me to protect her under my wings constantly, worried she'd be hurt by the plot. She had enough strength and wisdom to face the wind and rain, to cut the shackles, and personally break that predestined tragic fate. After this event, Garrett's reputation for publicly proposing to climb the social ladder, having bad skills, and harboring impure intentions was solidified. I used the momentum to find an excuse, some old debts of his father while guarding the border, to completely demote the Blackwood father and son, sending them far from the center of power in the capital, removing future trouble forever. And Alara's stunning performance at the polo match also made those ministers who were itching to profit from the princess's marriage shut their mouths temporarily. They realized more clearly that this soon-to-be-of-age princess was absolutely not comparable to ordinary women. 9. Alara's coming-of-age ceremony was held with extreme grandeur. I pushed aside all objections, setting the specifications far beyond previous princesses, close to that of a crown prince. I wanted the whole world to know, this is my treasure, the brightest pearl of the kingdom of Eldoria. That day, she wore a complex and magnificent royal gown, a golden crown symbolizing her status on her head. Her gait was calm, her bearing dignified as she walked on the red carpet of the palace path. The childishness of her youth had faded from her brow, replaced by a temperament that was calm as water, yet hid a sharp edge. Facing the gaze of royals, nobles, and officials, she was poised and elegant, responding appropriately. When citing classics, she spoke with assurance. When discussing people's livelihood and military affairs, she hit the key points. In the spectator seats, I heard the whispered praise of many old officials. The princess's demeanor carries the style of His Majesty in his youth. I heard the princess is not only brilliant in literature, but also extraordinary in writing and archery. Truly a blessing for our dynasty. Did you see that? This is the heir I spent 15 years pouring my heart's blood to cultivate. What? Women are inferior to men? You're all blind. My daughter standing there is a natural-born king. I sat on a high throne, looking at my daughter, my heart filled with unparalleled pride and satisfaction. The bits and pieces of 15 years floated in my mind, from that blue cloth bundle that was nearly drowned to the peerless, spotlight-stealing young woman today. I had filled with unparalleled pride and satisfaction. The bits and pieces of 15 years floated in my mind, from that blue cloth bundle that was nearly drowned to the peerless, spotlight-stealing young woman today. I had finally raised her to this day, safe, healthy, and outstanding. However, perhaps it was the mental exhaustion of these 15 years, or perhaps the limit of this body, or maybe my mission was about to be completed. Shortly after Alara's ceremony, a sudden severe illness struck me. It came fiercely. Even the royal doctors were helpless, only looking troubled and saying, overworked into illness, the oil is dry and the lamp is withering. I knew the time had come. The end of the transmigration was perhaps right now. And inside the royal chambers, the smell of medicine permeated the air. I lay on the dragon bed, feeling the life force draining from my body bit by bit. The court officials gathered in the outer hall, the atmosphere heavy, whispers constant. The focus was undoubtedly on the vacant throne. Where was the foundation of the state? I summoned Alara and Arthur to my bedside. Alara's eyes were red and swollen, obviously having cried. But right now she forced back her tears, holding my hand tightly. Arthur knelt by the bed. This son, who had grown into a brave young man, had red-rimmed eyes and trembling shoulders. Alara, my voice was weak, but I tried to keep it clear. Father has been raising you as the heir all these years. Do you? No. Alara's tears finally fell, but she nodded forcefully, her voice choked but firm. Daughter knows. Daughter has always understood Father's painstaking efforts. Good. I took a deep breath, my gaze locking on her eyes. Now, tell Father, do you want to be the master of this world? Not because Father wants you to be, but you, yourself. Do you want it? Do you have the confidence to take this heavy burden and make Eldoria, in your hands, even more peaceful and clear? This was the final confirmation and the most important encouragement. I wanted her to say her ambition and responsibility with her own mouth. Alara looked into my eyes. There was sadness and reluctance, but more than that, a courage to burn bridges and an innate sense of responsibility. She wiped away her tears, decisive, every word clear. Father, your daughter is willing. I will not fail Father's expectations. I will govern with exertion, making this world peaceful and the people happy. Daughter wants to be the emperor of Eldoria. Good, good, good. I said good 3 times, the big stone in my heart landing. I looked at Arthur, who was kneeling aside, already sobbing. Arthur, under my teaching these years, although he didn't have huge achievements, he was kind and polite, with a good heart, completely different from the domineering prince in the original Angst novel. Father, Arthur threw himself at the bedside. You must assist your sister well. I squeezed his hand, then looked at Alara. Siblings of one mind can cut through gold. This empire, Father hands over to you two. Son swears, I will do my utmost to assist sister, never harboring 2 hearts. Arthur kowtowed heavily, his voice crying, but incredibly resolved. Good children, both good children. This way, I can rest assured. Summon the ministers. I forced a breath and ordered. Sterling, eyes red, called out loudly. The heavy ministers, led by the prime minister, filed in and knelt all over the floor. I leaned into Alara's arm, using my last bit of strength to speak clearly. I decree the eldest imperial daughter, Alara, as the crown princess, to succeed me on the throne and inherit the great rule. Promote Prince Arthur to Prince Regent, to assist the new sovereign. Respect this. As soon as the decree came out, the hall was in an uproar. Although there were guesses, truly hearing the testament passing the throne to a princess still shocked many conservative ministers. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Since ancient times, emperors passed to sons, not daughters. This is ancestral rule. Although the princess is virtuous, a hen crowing at dawn brings ruin to the family, Your Majesty. Doubts arose. However, before I could speak, Alara had already raised her head. Her gaze was calm, but carried unquestionable authority, sweeping over everyone. My lords. Her voice wasn't loud, but it clearly suppressed the noise. Father's decree is given. I am the crown princess. What you worry about is nothing more than whether a woman can shoulder this heavy responsibility. She paused, her tone steady as a mountain. I began learning at 5, read through the classics at 10, and attended court with Father at 13. Regarding people's livelihood, administration, military affairs, and border defense, I dare not say I know everything, but I know a thing or two. In riding and archery, I dare not say I top the 3 armies, but I can protect myself, not diminishing the prestige of the royal family. Ruling the country and bringing peace to the world relies on benevolence, wisdom, courage, and responsibility. Since when is it decided by the difference between man and woman? Her gaze sharply looked at the few ministers objecting most fiercely. If you deny Father's 15 years of careful cultivation and deny my years of learning and ability just because I am a woman, my lords, is this the way of a subject? Is this loyalty and patriotism? These words were well-reasoned and imposing. Added to that, Arthur immediately stepped forward, standing by Alara's side, shouting, I, Arthur, obey Father's last decree. I swear to assist Her Highness the Crown Princess to the death. Whoever dares to disobey is an enemy of me. Arthur, the Queen had passed away from illness in my arrangements over the last decade. The key ministers whom I had briefed in advance, or who already favored Alara, also kowtowed one after another. We subjects obey His Majesty's last decree. We welcome Her Highness the Crown Princess. Long live. The opposing voices gradually grew weak in the face of this powerful aura and established fact. I looked at my daughter. The courage and wisdom she showed at the critical moment made my last shred of worry vanish like smoke. My strength was finally exhausted. I slowly closed my eyes. The last thing I felt was Alara's hot tears dripping onto the back of my hand, and Arthur's suppressed crying. Goodbye, my munchkin. Goodbye, my children. Daddy is going back. My vision fell into eternal darkness. 10. I sucked a sharp breath and opened my eyes. The familiar ceiling light, the soft bed, the computer tower blinking with standby light next to me. I was back. In a trance. I seemed to still smell the faint scent of sandalwood and medicine, my palms seeming to retain the warmth of Alara's tears. I sat up and looked at the computer screen. The webpage for the novel The Exiles rose. The General's Prisoner was still open, stuck on the initial chapters that had made me angry. Driven by a strange force, I clicked on the content search box and typed in Kingdom of Eldoria. Alara. Alara. The story in the book was blurry, only the ending was visible. And the ending had changed. In the middle period of the Eldoria dynasty, after the passing of King Alaric, his daughter succeeded the throne, known in history as Empress Illustria. During her reign, the Empress governed with exertion, expanded the territory, reformed the administration, encouraged agriculture and commerce, creating the Illustria Golden Age. Her brother, the Prince Regent Arthur, assisted faithfully all his life. The sibling affection became a legend. Empress Illustria broke the traditional inheritance system, and her governing ability and achievements are highly praised by later historians. Illustria Golden Age. I whispered these 3 words, the corners of my mouth raising involuntarily, finally turning into an incredibly relieved and proud smile. Tears blurred my vision. My Lara, she did it. She is no longer the tragic heroine in the Angst novel. She is a wise monarch whose name went down in history. My 15-year princess raising plan ultimately achieved an empress who looked down upon the world. I closed the novel webpage and walked to the window. Alara, Alara is the best. I raised the big flag for you. Alara, Alara is so strong. Her style rings loud and long. Woohoo. End of story.